Level 1, cards that are basically warm bodies. The lowest level of power in Duel monsters is the card that exists mainly to stand there, get destroyed, and give the duelist one more turn to pretend he has a plan. These are cards like Beaver Warrior, Silver Fang, Feral Imp, Griffor, Basic Insect, Mammoth Graveyard, and a lot of the early normal monsters that show up before the show fully understands what its own card game is. They are not completely useless, because in the anime, even a weak monster can matter if the scene needs it to matter. A small monster can block an attack. It can be used as tribute material. It can stall for time until the main card arrives. But on their own, these cards do not scare anybody. This is the level where most monsters are just numbers. They do not have special effects. They do not create combos. They do not change the rules of the duel. They are there because the deck needs more cards in it. The funny thing is, early Duel monsters treat some of these cards with way more seriousness than they deserve. Yugi will summon something like Beaver Warrior, and everyone reacts like he made a respectable strategic decision. In real life, that is just a small animal with a sword being sent to die. But in the anime, every monster gets a little drama because the show still wants every summon to feel like an event. The problem with level 1 cards is simple. They do not control anything. They do not force the opponent to change strategy. They do not win games unless the opponent is already falling apart. They are pieces on the board, not threats. This is where Joey starts in a lot of ways. Early Joey's deck has the soul of a man who found random cards under a couch. He has courage, luck, and emotional speeches, but the actual cards are often just regular monsters with regular attack points. That is why his growth matters. He starts with cards that barely belong in the same room as Kaiba's deck, and somehow he keeps surviving. Level 1 cards are not worthless, but they are the bottom of the ladder. They can help a great duelist stay alive. They cannot make a bad duelist powerful. Level 2, weak cards with one annoying trick. The second level belongs to cards that are still physically weak, but have some strange effect, gimmick, or story function that makes them more useful than their attack points suggest. Kurobo is the best example. On paper, Kurobo looks like a joke. It is tiny, fluffy, and has the offensive presence of a sneeze. But in the anime, Kurobo is weirdly dependable. It saves Yugi from damage, becomes part of combos, and survives because nobody expects the little furball to matter until it already mattered. Kurobo is not powerful in the normal sense. It is powerful because it interrupts death. Time Wizard also fits here, even though its impact can be much bigger. Time Wizard is a stupid card in the best possible way. It is basically Joey saying, I don't know how to win this duel, so let's age the board and see what happens. Sometimes it turns Baby Dragon into Thousand Dragon. Sometimes it backfires. That is level 2 power, dangerous, but not reliable. Magical Hats is another one. It is not a monster that punches through the opponent. It is a survival trick. It hides cards, confuses attacks, and lets Yugi pull off nonsense that only works because the anime treats card placement like stage magic. It is not strong in the same way Blue Eyes is strong, but it gives Yugi room to breathe. This level is full of cards that are not impressive by themselves. Their strength comes from timing. They need the right board, the right opponent, and usually the right dramatic music. If the situation is wrong, they look terrible. If the situation is right, they can make a stronger card look stupid. That is why this level is above the basic normal monsters. A level 1 card can only do what its stats allow. A level 2 card can cheat the moment a little. It can delay. It can surprise. It can make the opponent waste an attack. In Duel monsters, that matters, because half the duels are won by surviving long enough to draw the card the story wants you to draw. Still, these cards are not true power cards. They are not the center of a deck. Nobody builds an empire around Kurobo unless they are Yugi and the universe personally likes them. These are support cards. Useful, memorable, occasionally ridiculous, but still limited. Level 3, solid duel winning workhorses. Level 3 is where the cards start becoming genuinely respectable. These are the cards that can actually win normal duels without needing the entire plot to bend around them. Summon Skull belongs here. In early Duel monsters, Summon Skull feels like a monster that should have been treated as a bigger deal for longer. It has 2,500 attack points, which puts it right next to Dark Magician and only below Blue Eyes White Dragon among the early big names. It is simple, direct, and dangerous. It does not need a complicated explanation. It hits hard. Lejin, the mystical genie of the lamp, also fits this tier. Kaiba uses it as one of his reliable beaters. It is not his ace, but that is exactly the point. In Kaiba's deck, even the cards that are not the main event are still stronger than what many duelists are using as their best monster. Lejin represents the difference between a deck with random creatures and a deck built to dominate. Gearfried the Iron Knight is another strong level 3 card. Joey uses it often because it gives him something stable. It is not a god. It is not a dragon. It is not a magical instant win condition. But it is a real fighter. In Joey's deck, cards like Gearfried matter because they stop him from looking like he is winning only through accidents. The Magnet Warriors also belong around here individually. Alpha, Beta, and Gamma are not terrifying alone, but they are legitimate monsters with a clear purpose. They have structure. They are not just filler. They are pieces that can build into something stronger. This is the level where a card becomes dependable. It is not just buying time. It is not just waiting for a combo. It can fight, it can trade with other monsters, it can apply pressure. A duelist with several level 3 cards feels like he actually has a deck instead of a pile of emergency ideas. But there is still a ceiling. These cards are good in normal duels, but they do not define the show. They do not make the opponent panic just by appearing. Nobody sees Gearfried and thinks the laws of the game have changed. They just think, that is a strong monster. Useful, but not legendary. Level 3 is the middle-class power tier. Respectable, necessary, sometimes underrated. But once the real monsters arrive, these cards usually become stepping stones. Level 4, ace monsters with real presence. Level 4 is where cards stop being just strong and start becoming identities. Dark Magician is the cleanest example. Stat-wise, Dark Magician is not the most powerful monster in the show. Blue Eyes has more attack. Many later monsters have nastier effects. But Dark Magician is not powerful only because of numbers. It is powerful because Yugi's entire style bends around it. It has support cards, fusion options, magical tricks, and a constant emotional weight. When Yugi summons Dark Magician, the duel feels like it has entered its real phase. Blue Eyes White Dragon is also here, and probably near the top of this level if we are talking about raw normal monster power. Blue Eyes is treated like a card that separates serious duelists from everyone else. Kaiba having 3 copies is not just a deck choice, it is a personality disorder with wings. The card is arrogant, direct, and brutally simple. It does not need a clever effect. It is 3,000 attack points of rich boy violence. Red Eyes Black Dragon is weaker than Blue Eyes, but it still belongs in this level because of what it means inside the anime. Red Eyes is Joey's symbol. It represents potential more than perfection. It is not the strongest dragon, but it is the kind of card the show wants you to believe can grow with its duelist. That matters in duel monsters, where emotional connection sometimes hits harder than math. Jinzo also fits this tier, maybe even higher in practical terms. Jinzo shuts down trap cards, which is massive in the anime, because traps are often how duelists survive stronger monsters. A card that turns off an entire type of defense is not just strong. It changes how the opponent is allowed to play. Buster Blader belongs here too, especially because of how specific and deadly it becomes against dragons. Against a normal deck, it is a strong warrior. Against Kaiba, it becomes an insult with a sword. That is what makes it powerful. It does not dominate every situation equally, but when the situation is right, it becomes terrifying. Level 4 cards are the first real star cards. They have presence, they have history. They can carry a duel emotionally and strategically, but they are still beatable. Dark Magician can be destroyed, Blue Eyes can be countered, Red Eyes can lose, Jinzo can be removed. These cards are powerful, but they still live inside the duel. That is what separates them from the higher levels. They are legendary monsters, but they are not yet broken mythology. Level 5, cards that bend the rules of the duel. Level 5 is where the card game starts becoming less like a card game and more like a hostage situation. Relinquished is one of the best examples. Pegasus uses it like a nightmare. It absorbs the opponent's monster, hides behind that monster, and turns the enemy's strength against them. That is much more dangerous than just having high attack points. A big monster can be destroyed by a bigger monster. Relinquish makes the opponent afraid of their own board. Thousand Eyes Restrict pushes that even further. It does not just take a monster, it freezes the game. It turns the duel into a trap where the opponent cannot attack properly and cannot play normally. This is the kind of card that makes you understand why Pegasus is dangerous, even without counting his Millennium Eye. His cards are built to make the opponent feel helpless. Toon World and the Toon Monsters also belong here. The Toons are ridiculous. But in the anime, they are very powerful because they do not obey normal monster logic. They dodge attacks, attack directly, and operate inside Pegasus' private cartoon universe. That is not just a deck theme. That is a grown man weaponizing copyright law. Destiny Board is another level 5 kind of threat. Bakura's cards often feel less like monsters and more like curses. Destiny Board does not need to overpower you in battle. It slowly spells out your loss. That kind of win condition is scary because it changes the duel's pressure. The opponent is no longer just fighting monsters. They are fighting a countdown. Crush Card Virus also fits here because of how destructive it is in the anime. Kaiba uses it to wipe out stronger monsters from the opponent's deck and field, and that is a different kind of strength. It does not win by having the biggest monster. It wins by making sure the opponent never gets to use theirs. This level is dangerous because it attacks the rules around the duel. It limits options. It changes what counts as safe. It punishes the opponent for having good cards. That is stronger than simple attack power. Still, level 5 cards can usually be beaten by Clever Counter's luck or anime-specific nonsense. They are oppressive, but they are not absolute. They make the duel unfair, but the duel is still happening. Level 6, Legendary Monsters and World-Class Boss Cards. Level 6 is where the cards become mythological. The Egyptian god cards are the obvious center of this tier. Slipher the Sky Dragon, Obelisk the Tormentor, and the Winged Dragon of Ra. These cards are treated differently from normal boss monsters. They are not just rare, they are sacred. Characters talk about them like they are nuclear weapons with names. When one appears, the duel stops being normal. Sleeper controls the opponent by punishing summons. Obelisk is pure force. The monster version of Kaiba deciding subtlety is for poor people. Ra is the most complicated and dangerous, especially because the anime gives it layers of hidden effects, ancient text, life point manipulation, and later its phoenix form. Ra is not just a card. It is a rulebook that hates you. Blue Eye's Ultimate Dragon also belongs around this level in raw power. It has 4,500 attack points, and in the early anime, that number feels almost illegal. It is not as divine as the god cards, but as a fusion monster, it represents one of the highest forms of Kaiba's obsession. 3 blue eyes becoming 1 monster is basically Kaiba compressing his ego into a dragon. 5-headed dragon is another enormous boss monster from the Duel Monsters anime. It feels less personal than Blue Eye's Ultimate, but its power is obvious. It is the type of card that exists to make the heroes look hopeless for a while. The legendary dragons, Timaeus, Critias, and Hermos, also fit in this tier because their power is more flexible than normal monster strength. They fuse with other cards, create strange combinations, and carry story-level importance during the Orichalcos arc. They are not just beaters. They are answer cards, the kind of cards the show introduces when normal solutions are not enough. The Seal of Orichalcos is close to this level too, though its real danger is partly outside the game. In a duel, it boosts monsters and changes the field. In the story, it risks souls. That makes it one of the most disturbing cards in Duel Monsters, because losing is no longer just losing. It becomes spiritual repossession. Level 6 cards are not just strong. They dominate the mood of the show. When they appear, everyone understands the duel has reached a different class, but most of them still have conditions. The god cards need tributes. Blue Eye's Ultimate needs fusion. The legendary dragons need the right combination. The Seal of Orichalcos comes with consequences. They are legendary, but not always final. Level 7, cards that stop being cards. The highest level belongs to cards that do not simply help you win. They end the conversation. Exodia the Forbidden One is the cleanest example. Exodia does not care about attack points. It does not care what monster the opponent has. It does not care about dramatic speeches, field advantage, or whether Kaiba is currently making that face where he looks personally offended by friendship. If all 5 pieces are assembled, the duel is over. That makes Exodia different from almost every other powerful card in Duel Monsters. Blue Eyes can be beaten. Dark Magician can be destroyed. The Egyptian gods can be outplayed under the right anime conditions. Exodia is not a monster you defeat in battle. Exodia is a verdict. Divine Serpent Gay from the Orichalcos arc also belongs in this top level because its attack power is essentially infinite. It is the kind of anime card that sounds like a child made it up during recess after losing a duel. My monster has infinite attack. There is no normal response to that. You do not counter it with a slightly bigger monster. You need a story-level solution. The creator god of light, Horakti, is probably the highest symbolic card in the entire Duel Monsters anime. It appears at the final mythological height of the story, when the Egyptian gods combine to defeat Zork. At that point, the card is not operating like a normal duel card anymore. It is less a strategy and more a divine reset button. That is what level 7 means. These cards break out of normal comparison. You cannot rank Horakti against Gearfried like they belong to the same hobby. One is a warrior. The other is ancient light arriving to erase evil from the story. That is not power creep. That is the writers leaving the card game and entering religion. This is also why Exodia deserves to stand near the top even though it appears early. The show never really outgrows the idea of Exodia. It has to remove Exodia from Yugi's deck because if Yugi kept using it, too many duels would become pointless. There is no tension if the main character can just assemble the forbidden body parts and delete the opponent from the match. So the final ranking is simple. Level 1 cards are bodies. Level 2 cards are tricks. Level 3 cards are reliable fighters. Level 4 cards are ace monsters. Level 5 cards bend the rules. Level 6 cards become legends. Level 7 cards stop being normal cards altogether. And in Duel Monsters, that is the real ceiling of power. The strongest card is not always the one with the biggest attack points. The strongest card is the one that makes the duel stop belonging to both players.